Hi, this is John McMullen bringing you a tutorial on how to create an app-like environment using HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. So these are apps that when we're done creating it, you can take it and package it up, publish it across the Apple App Store, Google Play, and I think even Windows Phone. The greatest thing about this though is that so if you need to create an app-like experience for somebody but don't need the full functionality of an app, you can use this to quickly publish across devices, or you can just use this to publish on a web server and somebody can access it from their phone. So here I am, I'm inside of just Google Chrome, and I've got my test app that we're about to create set up. Now when I click on this, a nice menu slides out from the left. I can click on About, Home, and Contact, and it will eventually load in data. This is just what we're going to get today. We're going to create this just very quick environment. First thing we need to do is create an index.html file. Go ahead and put this inside of a folder. I called my folder HTML5 app template, and we're going to put in some HTML5 code and start getting this going. So let me increase my font size real quick. So the first thing we need is our doc type. I always need a doc type here. We're going to set our doc type to HTML, noting that we're using HTML5. And let's go ahead and open up our HTML bracket. Put in a header. The header again is where you contain your title and any information you have in there. So for the title, I'm going to write in a test app. We're also going to use meta tags inside of our header. The meta tags will control the what's called the viewport size, and also some things with Apple, making it look more app-like. But viewport size will tell your mobile browser not to try to scale your website down to what a typical, like 1,000 pixel website width would be. So if we were to create this without the viewport on there, and I'll go ahead and start typing as I'm talking. If we created this whole app without the viewport and somebody were to pull it up on their mobile phone, it would show the content as extremely tiny text and just wouldn't look right. Let's say width is going to be equal to device width. There's a lot that goes into viewport. If you wanted to kind of look up everything, just do a quick Google search on name equals viewport meta, and that will show you everything that there is to know about viewport. It's also helpful when developing websites so that it actually looks decent on tablets and whatnot as well. Sometimes it gets kind of squished around the sides on tablets. You can use viewports to set the device width to like 1024 if you have a 1,000 pixel website, and you'll get a nice padding on either side of your website. The other thing we want to do is set the meta name for Apple. So we'll say Apple, there we go. Apple mobile web app capable. What this does is it tells iOS that this can be used as a mobile web app. So if somebody were to put an icon of this on their iPhone, whenever they click it to pull it up, they'll be able to easily see it. It won't have the title bar at the top and the URL area and all of that. Next thing we'll do is bring in our style sheet that we have not created yet, but everything needs style. CSS type equals text/CSS. Alright, so we have everything set up for our header. Let's go ahead and put our body together and make sure everything is going to look nice. So there's the body. What we want to do is to get this environment where when you click on it, it's got this little thing that slides out on the side. We need to create a separate area for our header and our actual content in the background here than we have for the navigation. The navigation is going to kind of sit on top of everything and slide out. But we need to create a wrapper to contain our header and our content. So let's come in here and say div class equals wrapper. And I like to close my classes like this. That way I know that that's the closing div for the wrapper class. We'll set up our header and a simple navigation element for, and give it the class of logo. Rel equals close nav. This is going to come in handy when we write our JavaScript in the next tutorial. Go ahead and call it our test app. Create a nice little area for our content. And that's going to be it for everything that's contained in the wrapper. We have our header, which is up top here. We've got a logo on our header. And then all of this right here will be our content once our content gets created and we start bringing that in using JavaScript. So outside of that, let's go ahead and set up our navigation. So div id equals nav. And we're going to have a section for the menu, so nav menu. This might seem a little redundant. I'll explain why in a second here. So we'll go ahead and put a few links inside. We'll have our home link. And although most apps you set up probably won't follow, like a home, about, and contact structure, this is just an example. I'm using kind of the typical portfolio example to show you just how it functions basically. But you can use this and replace it with, if you're creating an app for a band, you can put in about the band, you can put in, songs and all that good stuff as well. And then we'll have a div id equals nav background. I don't put my closing comment in here because it's all one line. It's simple. So what this does is it gives us our navigation. The navigation is just held off to the left hand side here off the screen. When we click on this though, that nav menu slides in. That's what this baby is. And then this darker background that fades in is our nav background. So right now if you were to test this, it's not going to look anything like that. Let me go ahead and refresh it. It's going to look like this. Not sweet. But let's go ahead and write in some CSS. CSS makes things better. The first thing I want to do for the CSS is I've got my reset that I use for everything. I'm just going to copy and paste this into here. This is a complete CSS reset. It gets us back to 0 on everything. You can look up HTML5 reset if you would like to just copy and paste this, because typing this out would be a nightmare. Let me go ahead and enter down a couple of lines. And let's go ahead and start styling our header. So we have header. I'm going to set the background to E. Yeah. That'll give us a nice kind of light gray. There we go. Style this nice for everybody watching. And let's zoom in a little bit. So I've got my background color set to E. I'm going to set our width to 100%. Our height to 60 pixels. Tell it to display block. Let's give it a box shadow. 0, 0, 4 pixels, RGBA 000.4. If you're unfamiliar with the box shadow, this is the either top or left offset. I forget which one every time. But the offset, so that's what would push it down to the bottom or whatever. 4 pixels is how many pixels it will blur. And this right here, typically you would put in some sort of a, let's see, typically you do like 0.5 or something to show an opacity for it. No, I'm sorry, I'm completely wrong. That's a color. So typically you would put in like 000 to get it a black color. I've started using the RGBA because with that I can do 000, which is black. These are the colors for RGB. And A is the alpha. This is the opacity of it. So instead of just having a black blur, I can actually have it faded a little bit, which is nice and adds a really good effect to it. So I highly recommend going that route for using box shadows. We're going to set the position of our header to absolute. Top is going to be 0, left 0, and set the z index to 10. And if this is your last attribute that you're putting in there, you don't have to put a semicolon. It just saves tiniest bit of space, but if you have a large CSS file, it saves a lot of space after a while. Let's set up our logo inside of here. Logo height is going to be 60 pixels. The line height to 6 pixels as well, so we can center that text vertically. Set the display to block. And I'm sorry, it might be a little net to kick on my fan here from my computer. It gets real. Okay, so I've got the display to block for that. Set the color to black. Text decoration. And this is just what I'm doing for our test app. Again, you can use a logo, an actual image, anything like that for your logo. But I've got the padding set to 0 and 20 pixels. Alright, so that's it for the header. Right now, if we were to save that and test our file, it actually has a little bit of style to it. It's looking pretty good. Let's keep going down here, and let's style our navigation. So nav menu, we're going to set the width to 300 pixels. Let's give it a max width of 90%. What this does is if somebody's using a device that for some reason is 300 pixels or less in width, it'll make sure that the navigation menu doesn't take over the entire screen. I'll show you that in a minute here. I can't do it right now until we have all of our style in, but we'll take a look at that. I'm going to set the height of my menu to 100%. Let's give it some padding on the top. The padding on the top is equal to what the height of your header is. So if your header was 100 pixels, then the padding top would need to be 100 pixels so that none of the navigation elements get lost underneath the header. Alright, we've got that. Box sizing, this is kind of a neat little thing. Border box. Box sizing will make sure that your box, we're going to set it to 100% width. If we give it any padding, anything like that, then it's not going to go over the 100% width. Let's set this to display block. I've got my background to F5, F2, F2. It's a nice subtle gray color. Position on this one is going to be fixed so that whether we scroll up and down on our app, if we have more content, it'll still stay in the same top left position. We're going to set the left to negative 90%. And the top of it's going to be a 0. Z index is 9, right underneath our Z index of 10 for our header. Now let's give it a little bit of more style here. Let's give it a border to the right, 1 pixel solid. Opacity, this is kind of neat, 0.99. It just gives it a very subtle opacity, which is nice. And finally, we're going to set up a transition. So WebKit transition, all 0.5 seconds ease. What this will do is instead of our menu just popping out, this is going to give it that sliding effect. So we can take it off whenever we're looking at it again and kind of see the differences between having the WebKit transition, it's hard to say, and not having it, but it'll just kind of show you. So that's it for this. What it'll do is our navigation is going to be off to the left hand side and out of view. Now to get it in view, what we want to do is set our nav target, and I'll explain this in a minute here. Nav menu, left to 0, box shadow 0, 0, 4 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0.8. That's just style again. Alright, so what this does, we have our nav menu, it's set to the left 90%, it's hiding over there, that's fine. This nav target, what it's going to do is when our user clicks on our header link here, which has that hashtag nav, what it'll do is it's going to look for this div with the ID of nav. It's going to find that, and if this is clicked, our URL is going to change at the top. It'll change to have this hashtag nav, and when it does that, it's going to see this as targeted. So in our CSS, we can use that to say nav target. So when that is clicked, it's going to change, it's going to target that nav, and then we can drill down to our nav menu and edit the properties of it. So instead of the left being to -90%, we can set the left to 0. And we've got the box shadow as well, and all this is going to be animated in and look really nice. So you can use this for other elements as well. If you have things on your page that you want to come in at certain points in time, just use the anchor element with the hashtag of whatever the ID is. So say for example I wanted my nav background to do something when I clicked on it, which doesn't make much sense, but just in case, I could change this to nav background, and whenever that's clicked, it's going to target that ID. So then in your CSS, you would use, nav background target, and you can change it to whatever you want it to be. So let's keep going here. Let's add in the style for our actual nav background. No, actually, let's go ahead and set up our menu items here. Nav menu, let's just get this out of the way real quick. This is just simply style for our anchor elements. I'm going to make them display block. Set the color to AB. Text decoration, none. Border bottom, same thing, AB, 1 pixel solid. And padding is 15 pixels. Alright, next thing, let's set up our nav background. Again, this is that dark background that's going to fade in and look really pretty and everything. 100%, height equals 100%. Display block background 000. We're going to keep our opacity at 0 at first. Position absolute. Top 0. Left 0. Z index 1. And WebKit transition all 0.5 seconds ease. Alright, so again, I've got the WebKit transition set to the same as what the transition is for my navigation coming in. If you wanted the background to appear a little bit faster, you could set that to 0.3 and the background would appear more first and whatnot. If you wanted to slow it down, set it a little bit longer, you can just kind of play with that as you would like. But the biggest thing is here, right now the opacity is set to 0, so you've got, you won't see the navigation background. So what we need to do is use our nav target that we use to target that nav menu whenever it's clicked, and we're going to use that for our background. So we'll have nav target, nav background. We're going to set the Z index to 8 and the opacity to 0.5. Alright, so what'll happen is the same thing when that anchor element is clicked over here with the hashtag nav, it's going to trigger that div to target, and it will look for the nav background and change the CSS. So let's go ahead and refresh everything. I'm already on the nav, so when I come through here and you click your anchor element, which again is right here and has that nav, it's going to nav target the background and do that nav target for the nav menu, and it should slide out and look nice and pretty. Now again, just to kind of show you, if I were to get rid of the WebKit transition and I forget how to comment out CSS, I'll just cut it. If I were to get rid of it and refresh my page here and test it, it'll just pop out, which works, but we all like things to look nice and pretty, so I'm going to add that back in, refresh, and there you go. And since it's using all CSS right here, we have absolutely 0 JavaScript, and it's going to look gorgeous on the phone whenever you test it. But the next video we're going to make, we'll go into adding in content that will dynamically load in and making everything look good there. But thanks for the video. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email at simplejohn@gmail.com. That's SMPLEJOHN@gmail.com. And thanks a lot.